So I'm going to, for the next 30 minutes, I'm going to talk a little bit about our future together as a region. And we originally thought we had an hour and a half for this session. And so you may be wondering about dinner. The good news is I'm German, so I still have a strong compulsion to finish at 5:30. So we'll see what happens here. Right now the screen's blank, so if I'm just talking till that's over, then we're going to be done quickly. I want to talk about why I'm still here, working for InterVarsity after an experience I had, and what we as a region, particularly as a regional leadership team, are hoping for in the future. So before I jump into that, I just want to pray. Father, our deepest desire is that thy kingdom come and thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And Lord, we long for the kingdom to reign more fully and completely in our hearts and in our lives and in our communities and on our campuses and with our neighbors. And Lord, I pray that these moments we share together this week, the words I share in the next few minutes would serve your purposes. In Christ's name, amen. So I got an email from a former grad student, I guess about a month ago. I want to read it to you. He was a donor. I've been mulling something over for quite a while, even before we'd spoken last time. I just talked with him in the last year. My InterVarsity support over these years has been to serve two purposes. First, as a small token of what your friendship beginning in my grad school years has meant to me. And second, to contribute to an organization that I enjoy being part of. But as much as I admired my friends in that community, I always knew that I was somewhat apart from it. I guess I wish that I would click into the same mindset. But it just never really took. In the years since, I've become more and more distanced from those views. I had long thought my contributions to you through InterVarsity would be to an organization that was at least a beacon to a more intellectual and responsible form of Christianity. But these days, I'm so utterly disgusted with what, in some cases, mainstream Christianity espouses newly, or in other cases, what it willfully ignores, that my meager support of an organization that may or may not attempt to bridge the gap seems a foolhardy endeavor. The mainstream Christian views on science, morality, tolerance, civics, disgust me to no end, and I'm sure this may be a puzzling email. It probably raises questions that I don't foresee here, but for now, I would mainly like to leave the topic as is. So when I read that email from Michael, I could care less about losing the money. I kind of had an impression he was been walking away from the faith. But what struck me is I resonated with what he was saying in terms of frustration with the broader church, and in my own journey, I think 5 years ago I felt optimistic about if I were to say where I thought things were and where they were going. And I actually had a long conversation with Greg Howe about this a couple weeks ago, because if you know Greg, he's very well read and knows everything. And he we concluded that I go to an Episcopal church and I live in InterVarsity, and that I probably didn't have a strong sense of where the broader, or at least the broader white evangelical community was. So I was very optimistic 5 years ago, but since then, my perspective on both the past of the church and the present, I've become more and more disillusioned, which isn't a good experience when you work for an organization that's widely respected and seen as part of the evangelical community. And I could list a million different things, but I just, in my reading and learning and becoming more aware, two things that jump out right away as I was preparing this, it was the George Whitefield, the revivalist preacher that in seminary I was taught to revere. Now they know that he was one of the key figures in institutionalizing slavery in the formation of our country. That just never came up, but that seems important to me. As I reread American history or read history in sections that have been left out. And then just last week I'm listening to a sociologist who's talking about all the work he's been doing on the civil rights movement, particularly in the South. And what he was particularly digging for is what sustained the resistance to the civil rights movement. It's like there seemed to be this infrastructure. And what his conclusions are is it was the churches in the South provided an infrastructure not for the advancement of civil rights, and there's exceptions in all this, but that provided the communication networks for a lot of, and the relational networks for what was the resistance to the civil rights movement. And so I wrote Michael back and said, you know, this forces me to think about why, because I feel a lot of what Michael does, and so my question for me is, then why do I stay? So I wrote him back, and that got me thinking, why am I staying working for InterVarsity? And if I were to, oh, by the way, I don't want you to miss this next slide. This is the Michael Oldham picture. It was an awesome picture, but I couldn't find it. He showed up at the Christmas party with Christmas lights on him like a Christmas tree, and they had batteries, so they were plugged in and everything. And you know, digging around for a photo from right around 2000 is almost impossible to find because it may be digital, it may not be, and you don't know where the print went in. But fundamentally, here's my conclusion after writing to Michael, and I don't know if some of you are on the edge of your seat wondering if I'm getting ready to leave InterVarsity. I'm not. But the reason I'm deciding to stay is that fundamentally, I believe that InterVarsity is working against some of the worst demons in the American church.
Amen.
And if I'm going to be part of anything church-related right now, I want to be part of a movement that is working against some of the worst demons in the American church, because I do think the gospel is real and provides hope and provides transformation. I don't think we live it out in community well within our country right now, and yet when you look at history and you look at the world, no one's living it out perfectly in the way we long for. We long for the kingdom to come and for the will to be done. And in some ways, when you look at the demographics of who we're working for, I think we're working with the future of the vibrant church in America, and that gets me really excited. So there's a famous Wayne Gretzky quote. Someone asked him, why are you so good at hockey? And he said, I don't skate to where the puck is, I skate to where the puck is going. And I think there's real truth to that in life, but I feel like that's where we are in InterVarsity right now. And so part of that is, I think looking at the demographics of where we are, but also thinking about where we're going and what are the kinds of students we're working with. So, I'm going to talk about as I was answering Michael, and then I pulled out our strategic plan, I realized there's a total dovetail about what I'm feeling and kind of what we're valuing as a region going forward. So anyway, we're going to jump into that. I'm probably not going to take questions right now because of time, so y'all can have dinner. But I'm open to questions anytime this week, and I may even have time on Friday morning to field more questions. So if you want, in your packet is a one-page, two-sided thing that has the strategic plan. I'm not going to walk you through every line or anything. But so our first plank of this strategic plan is to increase staff recruitment and retention of people of color and women. So if you were to look at the current state of our region, right now, only about 41% of the students we're working with are Caucasian American-born students. So that means 69% are people of color or international. We're actually 51% men and women, so that's almost 50-50. And I'm not sure, math isn't my background. In fact, if I told you how little math I took to get through life, you'd be shocked. But I think that means like 20% of this, if it's 40% are white, Caucasian, and we're half male, female, that means possibly somewhere around 20% of the students we're working with are white males. And by the way, my wife said, well, two things I want to do. These are my qualifiers before I talked. I'm a white male talking about ethnicity and gender. I'm probably going to mess things up. I find that I often prefer not to say anything publicly because I might mess it up, so please forgive me. And I really mean that. And then I kind of went over this with my wife, and she said, I think the white males may feel hurt. So I think by the end of today, I may hurt everybody's feelings before we're out of here. And I will take responsibility for that. So if you look at our staff team right now, and this was technically February 1st. So we had 34 men, 14 women. You can just look at it up there. PSD stands for the abbreviation of people of color. Here's one reality. RLT, all the men except for Carrie are, I'm sorry, all of us are men except for Carrie, all of us are white except for Brian. And then as a region, our staff team is 54% white male. Now, I could say, well, we want to create staff teams that reflect our students, and we really do. I think to be effectively continuing to pay attention to where our students and faculty are going in terms of their demographics, we want our teams to reflect it. But I just want to pause and say, teams that are diverse teams are far more fun to work on, far more effective to work on, and I feel like we discern the will of God better when we have voices from multiple perspectives together. So this isn't an attempt to be politically correct. This isn't, as a region, we long for our teams to reflect the diversity that the university is enjoying. Now, some of you are going, well, why don't you go to the staff store and get that balance fixed? And if you've ever been to the staff store and you do a search, it's hard to find anything, but particularly new staff. Yeah. Well, I just try to do a folder or something, and I know they're working on it. Bless their hearts. For John, who's from up north, bless their hearts is what you say after you insult somebody. So one of our initiatives under this is to increase all recruiting efforts, but give special attention to recruiting women and people of color. So part of this is, I think, particularly since all the area directors are white males, our normative gaze, I think, could tend to be towards white males. And now we're trying to get rid of that normative gaze and think, how do we work specifically to identify and recruit women and people of color into our staff teams? So that's something we're working on. We're open to ideas, very, very much so on that. So one is to try to recruit people, but the second part that is equally or more important is for us to create teams that are welcoming. So I don't know if I need to explain this, but when you have a team of, I'm not trying to pick on any team, so but let's say hypothetically, you have a team where there's very much homogeneity, and well, I can say this, I think. So Will and I were recruiting a woman of color, a young woman of color, to a staff team, and it's like the team that we would put her on would be really just hard, and then she could see that, and she would have been, yeah. So anyway, we didn't successfully recruit her. We'd love to have her, but we want to make sure that culturally and our cross-cultural skills on every team that we're working to be the most welcoming we can be to everybody. So we're going to be working on training around ethnicity and gender, so that we've done our part and are preparing the way for God to create more diversity among our staff teams. Part of the dynamic to this conversation in the region is we already have some very diverse teams, and we have other teams that are not diverse. And as I say that, I'm not wanting people who are on less diverse teams to go, oh, woe is us. But I'm just saying this is what we, as a region, we want to grow more diverse teams everywhere. So if you're paying attention to the problem here, if we're talking about recruiting staff of color and women, those tend to be people with low networks, more so than white males, particularly in the part of the country we're in where we're in the South. So funding women and people of color in the South has just proven really hard. And it's not hard for every single one, but the trends are that it's much more difficult. So I got ahead. How did I get it? I have a dollar sign on here that I'm trying to find. There it is.
Show me the money.
Show me the money, yeah. So, here's my point, I forgot. So this was just talking about, we're wanting to work on creating better reporting and planning systems for part-timers. So our normative gaze has been staff or full-time, and so everything is built for full-time staff. And we want to create better systems and structures to sustain and invite part-timers and volunteers with that. So I'm sure no one paid attention, but I sent out 2 versions of the annual ministry plan, one for part-timers that was shorter, one that was in full length for full-timers. And I think it's going to take some time to make those changes, but we're wanting to figure out how to make it work well. And in the past, my postures have been, well, let each person work it out for whatever works for them. But then that puts all the burden on the part-timer to figure out what part of the form is good, what do I want to do, what I don't want to do. So we're in a posture of wanting to learn from part-timers and from volunteers. How do we create welcome space on our teams? So then I was getting to the money. And so our second plank, I really wanted to use that graphic, is fully resourced staff through multifaceted best practices approach to ministry partnership development. So historically in InterVarsity, our approach has been built around kind of a rugged individualism. And I still, I think Sophia Gabriel's put it really clearly at our national GFM conference. And I think this is just a hypothetical illustration, but you hire two staff at the same time. One makes 150 calls and is fully funded. The other makes 300 calls and is only half funded. And the way our system's been built, it's like, well, lucky for one guy or woman and unlucky for the other, and that's just the way it is. So some people are always fundraising and some people they cross the line and they're all done. What we're wanting to do is shift to a much more team mentality. And there's two dimensions to this, and don't get too nervous, let me explain them first. But we want to work towards a more communal mindset in terms of working together as teams to do fundraising. So one of the things you've seen is the Summer of MPD, where you can jump into that community, you can be prayed for, or you can actually be virtually together while you're making phone calls and separate. So it's like, how do we do this together in a way rather than just the individualist surviving? And then secondly, we want it to become more just normative, and that we're not all, like once you get your 150, you don't have to say you're done and good luck everybody, but that people would be joining in to continue to fundraise and then share overages as able. So there's going to be no rules or laws that dictate that you need to share an overage, but what if we all made 200 calls and then we're all fully funded? That's another possibility. So we don't know exactly where that's going, but we want to be praying together and working together. And again, we're open to ideas of what does it mean to work together like that. And then another piece to what we're trying to do is just provide better financial management. So you know that I asked 3 times this past year for your projections of where you're going and where your funding is going to land. That's going to be standard. And part of what we've realized in the past. Well, I've often treated financial issues like fine wine. Put it in the cellar, don't pay any attention to it. Hopefully, when you go get it, it'll all be great, which doesn't work that way. So we're trying to see things early and help you see things early and stay on top of them. So, so those are going to continue. But for example, the one we pull in early May that you project for the next fiscal year, then you can roll right into the Summer of MPD and work with other people in your fundraising. You know right what you're trying to do. So we're going to finish, I'm going to get a last chance to make some transfers tomorrow. I get to see the final, almost final. And I don't know yet, but I think throughout the region, we've seen a lot of major deficits come down, and I think we're going to see more people balanced than ever and overall deficits be smaller. So I feel like we're moving where we want to go there, but we still have a long ways to go. And our ultimate goal by the end of the 3 years is to see everybody not only fully funded, but fully paid at full salary. So another way to get everyone, no deficits is dramatically cut salaries on some people. And that's not how we're wanting to solve the challenge. So if we're growing a more diverse staff team and resourcing it well, and we're working where the puck is going, I think the next thing we want to do is see more people invited into these communities where the gospels are being lived out, as Tom was talking about. So we want to plant more communities and more corners and more campuses. So before I kind of show you where we're thinking of going here, I want to give you a little background. So I asked all the ADs kind of at a week's notice, hey, can you give me numbers of where you hope to be in 3 years? And what campuses and what chapters? This was in September. I needed it for Bobby, and they gave me these numbers, and it was a lot of places. And So I like, Bobby said, Bobby didn't even know the actual campus, he just needed the numbers. So I kind of rolled them back a little bit, gave them to Bobby. Bobby looked at them and he rolled them back and then made his input into the GFM plan. And then we started working on this strategic plan together as an RLT in December. And then I sent all those back to the ADs and said, now I need you to really look at them again. And I encourage you to take them to your teams and have discussions, because I didn't say they'd look ambitious, because I don't know what God's doing. But so I did that. And they sent them all back to me, and I don't think it's any small. I think it's even a slightly bigger list. So so there's different postures we could have towards the realities of what I'm seeing, of where we're hoping to go as a region. One is, we're just a bunch of young gunners. Well, you've all seen the age of the RLT. We're not young gunners. Two, God might actually be doing something. And I don't know. I just don't know. But my posture is I'm going to pray and work towards that God's calling us to work towards this, and see what He might do. So anyway, I'm going to share you some numbers. Our vision is to plant on 37 new campuses. And this is really in a 3-year window right now. And on those, plant 68 new chapters. And what's a little, I'd almost say frightening, is I can see, like right now, where the things are in the work on half of that. Like, this isn't like, these aren't like counting on a grand slam to pull it off. I can see things going on there. Now, you might be wondering, those numbers don't mean anything to you, because you don't know where we are currently. So, currently we're on 34 campuses. So if we were to add 37, we'd be on 71. And we have 68 chapters in the region. That would take it to 136. If you're a numerologist, you might have some meaning in the 68. I don't know. But I don't know what God's doing. But when I say I'm going to pray and work towards it, I'm not saying I'm going to work longer hours. I'm going to trust God and be open to what He's teaching. And if I have to work a little differently and pay attention to different things, I'm eager to do that, and we'll see where it all goes. So that's just from our current leadership team and our current geographies. But in addition to that, Leon and I had a chance to apply for an underserved geography grant. And it was a close call, but we got it. And so, and this is a different time frame. Yes, let's thank God. So, in addition to all this regular work we're doing, we're hoping to plant pretty aggressively over the next 12 years, 11 years, down to 11 now, by 2030, in parts of our region where we have I think, we have 0 right now, right, Leon, in this?
Chandra's in Mississippi.
Mississippi, yeah. So if you can, I don't know if you can see this very well, but it's the Deep South, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and North Texas. So we've identified, what have we identified? I think, is it 26 R1 and R2s in that space? Maybe it's 24. So Research 1 and Research 2, which these are the schools that have the bulk of your graduate students. And within 30 minutes of each of those, there are enough, so there's a total of 84. So undergrad institutions, within 30 minutes of those, where we want to help plant faculty ministry. So again, this is the 11-year window. We're not trying to knock this out in 3. So in total, it's 84 new schools that we hope to plant ministry at in the next 12 years. With our real passion is getting work planted at these major institutions in part of the country that is economically some of the most depressed, racially some of the most divided. And so we're going to be rolling out more information to you all about that. Leon just came from a week of meetings in Miami on that. So anyway, I'm excited about that. I don't know where it's all going to go, but again, I think God's up to something. So here's just a quick snapshot of all those schools. There's several HBCUs in there as well. So this is so we've named Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, the Magnolia area. And in InterVarsity, I don't know how we've institutionalized that. I think there's some report we filed and now that's a new area. The Oklahoma Oklahoma, Arkansas, and North Texas. The perfect name for that would be the Red River, because the Red River runs right through all that. But the problem is we already have a Red River GFM region, so we're calling it the North Red River area for now. But if you come up with a great name that would be descriptive of that geography, because there's some commonality, please let me know. So, welcome folks from Atlanta. We'll do a commercial break, because we have another new staff. I think, Loanne, this is your first time at our regional staff conference? So I'm going to let Michael introduce you. We did this earlier for people here for the first time.
Can't forget Felicia either, right?
She's been here.
Well,
She's been here longer than most of us. But this is Loanne. She is part of our area staff team in Atlanta. She started with InterVarsity undergrad about, what, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago? And we both wanted her, both the area director undergrad and myself for grad. We didn't fight over her, we worked together. She started with undergrad and just recently, last semester, came on with us graduate. And we love her. She's an expert with internationals. God is teaching her. She's breathing the character of Christ on the campus at Emory especially. She graduated from Columbia Seminary and even has a ministry small group there as well. And so we're very excited to have Loanne. Let's give her a great round of applause. Oh, and can't forget Glenn over there too. I saw Felicia and like, Glenn, you hiding over there?
Yeah.
Glenn Goldsmith, everyone.
All right. So,
Hi, y'all.
yeah.
All y'all.
So, we're talking about the future of the region. So the last thing, in terms of our last plank, is to see more students and faculty respond to the invitation of the gospel. You know, given my introductory comments, I think of this verse a lot. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You travel over land and sea to win a single convert, and when you've succeeded, you make them twice as much a child of hell as you are. So, to put it in more contemporary language, conversion isn't always a good thing. It depends what you're being converted to. And I started thinking about this. I thought about it quite a bit over the years, but in a more focused way. I was on the way to church on Easter, and my daughter had done an exchange program, and there were some German students in town, and they wanted to go to church with us. So I'm in the car with 3 non-Christians, and then we start talking about the gospel and church, and they're all, you know, high school age, and I'm just thinking, well, what is the how do I communicate the gospel to a 17, 18-year-old person? Because these are, you know, like maybe only 4 or 5 years away from being grad students. And I pulled out Henry Nouwen's Life of the Beloved. I don't know how many of you have read that over the years. It's him trying to communicate the gospel basically to his secular friends. And I don't have a really clear exact answer right now, but I'm deeply convinced that I want to invite people to Jesus. I don't want to invite them to the American church experience. There's a lot of things I don't want to invite people to, but I do want to invite people to Jesus. And I think one of the things that we as a region are paying attention to, and InterVarsity is paying attention to, is how do we build invitational communities where we more naturally are inviting people to respond to Jesus. I think in the past we've felt that's awkward, or we're going to a Billy Graham crusade model, but that's one of the things we're really going to be paying attention to and trying to grow in both in our own lives, but also helping students and faculty grow in, is creating invitational communities. And not just maybe an invitation at the end of large group, but how to help people just invite, even in one-on-one conversations, to respond to Jesus. And I got to say, I think about my friend Michael, who I read about in the beginning. And I want a gospel that Michael's excited about, that it's not playing into the darkest demons of the modern church, but is reflecting who Jesus really is. So in quick summary, our hope is to increase staff recruitment and retention of people of color and women. We hope to fully resource staff through multifaceted best practice approaches to MPD. Plant witnessing communities on more corners and more campuses. and finally see more students and faculty respond to the gospel. So I'd like us to, let's say pray in twos. Just for the last 3 or 4 minutes here, is turn to the person next to you. And let's pray for us as a region. And I'm putting up a few prayer requests. You can pray off anything I've said. And we're going to have more time to pray tomorrow. But I wanted to close this time, as we get ready to go to dinner, praying for the things that we've just laid out. I don't know what God's doing. But I'm on board with InterVarsity as much as I ever have, and looking to see forward to seeing what he does. So I'm going to give us let's 3 or 4 minutes. Grab a partner, 2 by 2, do-si-do, and pray. All right.